Yeah.
So it looks like we're about a minute into this. We've got folks trickling in and joining. Thank you everybody for being here. I'm going to give this just another moment, and we're gonna kick things off. Make sure all my things are muted. Modern challenges. All right. So it looks good. I'm gonna get right into it here, folks. So welcome to UPLevel. Thank you for being here. We're really excited to have you all here today. We've got some of the biggest brands in the world represented, and some real true world-class experience programs in the audience. If you're just joining us, you're new to this experience, we're about 2 years into our UPLevel event that we've been hosting on a quarterly basis. We're really proud to have seen growth and attendance quarter over quarter as this thing develops. It's been a really interesting progression for us to really, it's an opportunity for me. I'm out there talking to all these programs, listening to the unique challenges of each of these customer engagement programs and the opportunities that they're facing. Obviously, it's been a dynamic time over the last couple of years. So it's a great opportunity for us to get together and share some ideas. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Marshall Thompson. And it's my great privilege to be part of this event and to host these conversations with some of my favorite people in the industry and hear about the cool things that they're doing. So as you all know, we try to keep this casual. Feel free to type into the chat. We'll try to keep an eye on it as much as possible, but know that this recording will be available to everybody after the fact, and we'll try to share some key insights and some of the data that we actually get out of this conversation as a follow-up to all of you that are joining. And I want to say thank you to everybody for your patience with our reschedule. As you know, that's the way things tend to go these days. We roll with the punches and we make it happen. Typically, this is a 3-panelist conversation. I'm actually really excited to have 2 today. It allows us to dig in with some of my friends here and get a little bit lower level in terms of what's going on with each of your organizations. So without further ado, I want to bring in my panelists here, good friends and true thought leaders in the space. We're going to be talking about briefing programs, systems, and tools, the technology and teams that are operating these experiences and are behind the scenes delivering what always seems like a polished experience, to unpack a little bit about what's actually happening behind the curtain and learn about the magic that you're presenting. So I'm joined today by Bryan Hobbs and Kathy Edwards from GoogleCloud and Lexmark, respectively. I don't want to do you the disservice of attempting to tell our audience about who you are and what you do. So, Bryan, maybe you could take the lead for us. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your experience within this industry, and a little bit about the program that you represent today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marshall, for this opportunity. I'm super excited. Always love connecting to the UPLevel events. And so whether it's in person or virtual, they're always informative. And so I actually am currently in Sunnyvale at our Google Cloud EPC. I've been with Google Cloud for almost about the last 1.5 years, and we have a lot of different things happening over that last 1.5 years. But traditionally, I started my briefing journey back in, I don't even know the year, but I spent about 8.5 years with the Cisco program, doing all types of innovative things there. And then from Cisco, I went and joined the Symantec Experience Center, where we had the opportunity to relaunch our program, launch a new briefing center. And now at Google Cloud, kind of relaunching and going through a refresh during this time of COVID. And it's been exciting. It's been fun. If you don't know, Google Cloud happens to be one of the top 3 cloud providers. And so we are really trying to make a splash and continue to drive leadership in the cloud space, but also we are adding to our briefing team. And so we currently have now 4 teams that make up our EBC program. And whether it's a my team is the demonstration and content team. We just added our speakers bureau team. We have our program manager team and the coordinator team that really comes together to make this magic happen.
Yeah, it's been really exciting to see this, a well-resourced program that has the opportunity to kind of start fresh, right? You've brought in all these experts with experience from a number of, major programs, and you're really able to hit the ground running. And it's been cool to watch just what you've been able to achieve in the last year. And it's such a unique time to start the building process in the middle of the COVID challenges and everything else, but it lets you make these interesting decisions based on the factors that we're all faced with today. So kudos to you and everything that you've done. We're showing the cloud space, just the lobby and a couple of the elements there. So this is actually known as Cloud Space. Do you have other locations in the footprint or maybe plans to scale that out for the future?
Absolutely. We have our Cloud Studio, which is our New York City EBC, and we definitely have plans on the roadmap to expand globally within 2022, and that's coming quickly. So we're doing a lot here and abroad.
Well, fantastic. I know that we're going to get into those ideas of scale and the team that you're building, a lot of exciting capabilities there. But before we do, Kathy, hi. Thanks so much for joining us from Lexington. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the Lexmark program?
So you'll find you're bringing some Southern to this California crew here.
Yes, ma'am.
So apologies in advance for my Southern accent, but yes, I'm Kathy Edwards. I am with Lexmark. For those of you who don't know, we manufacture printers and imaging products and solutions. I've been with Lexmark for 22 years. The last 9 of those have been with our Customer Engagement Center, managing our executive briefing program. Back in 2015, we did a huge remodel. So we've got about 10,000 square feet here at our corporate headquarters in Lexington, Kentucky. And you'll see in the pictures here, we've got quite a bit of a journey. So from the entry and the beautiful lit lobby and messaging, you'll see messaging throughout, and we really customize to every customer who comes in the door an experience. So whether it's a manufacturing industry or healthcare industry, we really try to weave our story. And so historically, for the anywhere between 180 to 200 briefings here that we've hosted in person, we've been able to take them through that journey. And so quickly we had to pivot, right, with hybrid and virtual briefings. So we've done a little bit of both, and it's been an adventure for sure. So we've had about 23 briefings, both in person and virtual, and a few hybrid this year. So.
Excellent. So, Kathy, you mentioned that there are some kind of adjacent program or an adjacent program to your Experience Center. What is that known as, and how does that differ from your operation in Lexington?
So we do have solution centers around the globe. So we have some that are, regional centers, and then we have locations in New York, in Dallas, DC. So we're seeing a big change in how we approach. So whereas Bryan's looking to grow some of their centers, we're really looking at maybe eliminating some of our centers and really starting, because of the virtual experience. And
right.
It's been so positive for us that I think we'll see more of regional centers. And so that's going to be a different thing for us.
Very cool. And, it's you're in a unique location. It's not exactly a briefing center hub like here in Silicon Valley where you can throw a rock and hit a couple of them. But we've always talked, in our friendship about the unique things that you do to bring that Kentucky feel, some of the unique Lexington flavor. Tell us just a little bit about what that looks like, bringing customers in and how you curate that experience.
So certainly the customized experience here in our briefing center is important, but we want to make sure the overall experience is wonderful. So here in Lexington, we are known for University of Kentucky basketball, Kentucky bourbon, the only place that you can really get a good bourbon, and thoroughbred racing. So Churchill Downs is just north of us in Louisville, but we have a beautiful historical racetrack called Keeneland. And so when we are bringing in customers, we do that during the Keeneland meet, both spring and fall. So right now I'm missing the races. They've just gone off. And I told Marshall I'm on my 4th day of losses at the track hosting customers. So I appreciate his helping me out with my wallet today. But
maybe
we
can
really
help
do
break the streak.
We really focus. We have a staff of 3 and then an embedded AV technician, and we really focus on the relationship. And so part of that is true entertainment when they're here.
I love it. I can't wait to visit sometime. It sounds like a great experience. Definitely speaking to my interests, at least. So without further ado, I want to get right into it and talk about some of the things that we promised the audience that we were going to get into, because there's a lot to cover here. So just at a high level, when we think about tools, I want to start with enterprise level. You're both big global firms. So Bryan, tell me just a little bit about your tech stack, what your teams are using day to day to actually operate this program that you're representing. What does that look like?
Yeah, sure. From a briefing planning perspective, we are currently leveraging Salesforce as our CRM, and it really is it's been able to sustain us as a program, but as we grow, we quickly identified the need of having an actual briefing tool. And so we're looking at implementing that in early 2022 as well. We also use, of course, Google Workspace tools to run the business day in and day out. We live off of it. We love it. And then, we have some other tools that we're looking at to enhance the customer experience, whether in the briefing room or during demos.
Right.
And so those will be homegrown tools. More to come about that soon.
Yeah, for sure. So Kathy, how about you, Lexmark?
Yeah, so we are fully integrated Microsoft platforms across the board. So we have Outlook, Dynamics. We just transitioned from Salesforce to Dynamics about 3 years ago. We use Microsoft Teams for our video conferencing and for collaboration. We use SharePoint. We've in the past have used Amazon Web Servers to host our demos, but we're moving all that over to Azure. We even, as a briefing team, have really adopted Microsoft Planner, and we get a little crazy with assigning our account managers and different people their assignments. And so they get really angry with us for the planner tool. But so that's a little bit on the corporate. And then Signet, now Nexus, we've been really moving more towards some of the other programs like digital signage. So we use Nexus for digital signage. We have the customer portal, which has really helped us during a virtual experience, because we can push a little prettier agenda, push that just easier communications and follow up. And we're investigating now moving to the hub for the Signet Hub and Nexus Hub for our scheduling tool. So we, when we integrated to Microsoft a few years ago with Dynamics, we tried really hard to focus on using the big tool for our briefing request. And we've found there's some limitations, which I'm happy to share later.
So that's really interesting that and Bryan, we'll get to you in a second here, but you're both in this moment where you've been using off-the-shelf enterprise tools and identified the need for something that's maybe slightly more specialized. So, tell me about what that evaluation actually looked like, or what the limitations might have been, where you said, we need something that's purpose-built to be able to be maybe more efficient or operate this more smoothly. What are you hoping to uncover by adopting a specialized tool? Bryan, why don't you take that first?
Sure. So we looked at how the program was just really growing and scaling, and what the needs would be for the future prior to us even adding the speakers bureau element to the program. We said we want to be able to have a tool that can support that, because that's going to be a big part of how we execute briefings day in and day out. Reporting was a big part of this as well. And so we currently today, we have some reporting capability, but we wanted that built into an ideal briefing tool. And so that's a consideration as well. And then again, as we bring on other sites, being able to leverage that platform to manage the planning and all the logistics associated with briefings.
Of course, there's a lot more that goes into it than just a standard calendar invite, huh? So Kathy, you obviously have a very kind of rich experience that you're offering. Historically, it's been a multi-day thing, bringing customers to Lexington. What are you looking for? What are you hoping to uncover in terms of a specialized tool as you survey the landscape?
Yeah, for us, it's really becoming more efficient and being more scalable. Here at our headquarters in our CEC, we kind of set the tone for the rest of the world as far as best practices, and so making sure that we have tools that are easy to use, scheduling. So I mentioned with digital signage. So whether it's digital signage or the portal. We're uploading logos in multiple places. We're scheduling, personally with Outlook, and then we're not, that doesn't tie to the agenda and there's crossover. So really simplification has been, I think, our big priority, and being more efficient. And that's really what we're looking at for logistics coordination. Hannah, who does all of our logistics, it's going to make her life a lot easier.
That's what we want for sure. We got to keep Hannah happy these days. I know.
We found we tried to use the big tool, the big engine with the briefing request when we went to Dynamics from Salesforce. And so, the account managers, we're trying to drive them to use the Dynamics tool, and it pulls in great information and we can tie it to opportunity for reporting. But when we needed something specific, trying to get to work with our IT and our integration team, 3 years to make a tweak to the request form is a little bit much. So, trying to look at other tools like Nexus has provided has been great.
Well, having an outside service provider that's held to a certain level, a standard of service level, and has a roadmap for a product as opposed to being something that's developed internally or managed internally, certainly has its benefits. You lose a little bit of control, but having throat to choke and a contract that kind of governs that scope of work, we find is a really helpful thing for programs out there. So Bryan, beyond just the briefing tool itself, you as having this very cool role in terms of technology and demonstrations manager, I know you made some big investments recently. Just talk to me very high level about kind of what some of those systems look like and how you're bringing those demos to life in the current world.
Right. It's interesting because we look at it from a customer journey perspective. And when we do that, it kind of puts a different lens on how we approach this. And so everything from the moment that you arrive in the lobby, making sure our signage is customizable and it's greeting a customer without greeting a customer was important. And then as you move into our space where a lot of our demos or technology experiences are located, we identified it by industry and really geared those experiences to each of our customers' industry, but also there's that in-person experience that we were developing, and then that virtual piece that we can't ignore, as Kpis was saying moments ago. And so
certainly
really planning for that. And when we look at how we even integrate our signage into our virtual experiences, is a lot of technology in the background that enables that. And so we've been spending the last couple months making sure that we can get it right and really be able to say, hey, you're not just a remote participant, but you're actually participating in this experience. And soon, as folks come back in person, it'll be a really dynamic experience for the hybrid, right?
Dynamic indeed. Yeah, certainly.
Bryan, your point is so well taken. For us, we had different stages in the journey in person. And so now we're looking at, okay, what's the welcome? What does that look like in person? What does that look like virtually? What does the, every step of the journey from the demo? And Marshall and I have talked many times about, our subject matter experts that are driving our demos and have done an excellent job, in person. That's a different skill set when you're in front of a camera, and then add in lights and sound and all of that from a hybrid experience. So we're not tripping over camera cords and, lights are making everyone sweat. That's been, that's really the journey that's ahead of us, is trying to figure all that out.
Yeah,
and we got some time to get into that for sure. So, but before we do, I want to launch a quick poll and hear from the audience. For those of you out there that are multitasking. I want your input here on this poll. Oh, that's the wrong question. Excuse me for a second. So very simply, do you use a specialized software to manage your program and the environment that it's hosted within? Very curious to hear what's going on. So yeah, I'll leave that up for a moment here. But just to kind of recap a little bit about what I'm hearing from the space, beyond just the Lexmark and GoogleCloud examples. So as we all know, the CRM, whether we're associated with marketing organization or a part of the sales org, the CRM is really the source of truth for the enterprise. And, bottom line is that we are part of a business and we are trying to influence the sales and growth of that business. So aligning to that data set as best possible. Sometimes that's just about understanding the vocabulary and what the KPIs are within those systems, but looking ahead, ensuring that your systems are neatly integrated together so you can receive information from them and write information back to those systems that's going to be relevant for those audiences and really, drive cohesive results that are going to make sense to these cross-functional teams, if you will. Also, a major benefit here is in terms of actually receiving requests, having a streamlined process for whoever your stakeholders are that may be hosting within your center or bringing their customers in, making that as easy and accessible as possible, having multiple ways to communicate with the program and get those requests in. That's been a big thing that we're hearing. How do we present ourselves more clearly to our audience of internal stakeholders and even external to encourage adoption and usage of the program, as much as we can handle to a certain extent. And finally, just as both of you spoke to, that the opportunities that automation can bring to the table, being able to use tags that are coming upstream from systems like the enterprise CRM, things like information about the customer's industry or potentially what product they're interested in talking about or segment within the industry that you're targeting, using those data points to trigger more curated and more meaningful experiences. So that can be as simple as shifting the digital signage in the space to reflect that customer's industry, if it's manufacturing or healthcare, but to have different content experiences. And the possibilities are endless when we think in this kind of Boolean, if this then that type logic. But the more data that we can correlate with our management systems, the more rich experience we'll be able to provide. So y'all, thanks for participating in the poll. It looks like we have a majority with systems, which is interesting. We have some polished and experienced programs out there for sure. So moving right along, I want to get into experience. Obviously you're both providing world-class experiences within your program. So Kathy, maybe I'll start with you here. Let's just talk a little bit about virtual and hybrid. You mentioned some of the challenges, but what are you doing to actually bring those experiences to life with this unique new a challenge that we have in terms of hybrid and virtual? What have you learned? What are you doing?
So I think, when we went into shutdown, we, immediately went into assessment mode, and we found very quickly that, we have a hardware, product. So we've got a printer that we do demos and, have those subject matter experts or somebody from engineering and development coming over. So we had videos, but they weren't the right kind of demos. We might have a demo for a salesperson, but it wasn't customer, facing. So really the virtual experience overall was pretty complex until we came into the ability to get back on site. And so we worked with our AV partner, AVI Systems, to develop a cart, which you'll see here. And that is our remote demo cart. So I talked a little earlier about, our movement around our square footage is 10,000 square feet. So our movement from place to place was very important, and being mobile was very important. And so we worked with them to create this mobile cart. It has 3 cameras, it has 3 monitors, it has its own designated PC, it integrates with Teams. We also use a software called Wirecast, which is like a production level software. And switcher to help us with that production, which is kind of interesting. So, so we are not, we didn't major in journalism and production, and we are very savvy now. You can see Philip here, who is our demo program manager, is working his magic. And you can see on the right here, this is how we're bringing in some of our tools like the portal to help with that experience. So what's that welcome look like, right? We might have a video going for their welcome while we're doing coffee with that person in the room. So very different experience overall. We use Microsoft Teams, as I mentioned earlier, for our video conferencing, and we weren't able to. So one of the things that was critical, like with this, right, we're in a webinar zone, and so we're not able to communicate directly. And for us, that experience had to happen with a two-way communication. So all of the things that I mentioned with the cart allowed us to continue that two-way communication. So the monitors allowed us to have the teams right in front of them, along with their presentation content and the camera. We have audio, lights. It's been quite a challenge. And now we're looking at, from a hybrid, expectation, how do we integrate the things that we've got on our mobile cart into the room? So we're looking at another technology refresh that we just had approved. And so that's been huge. And the biggest piece I would say about virtual and hybrid is the prep and planning is double, maybe quadruple. If you've got a hybrid, then it's even more, right? Because you're working on all the logistics in person with hotel and dinners and entertainment, which we like to do. And Hannah also needs to be behind the camera with a virtual event. So staffing has been of interest, and it'll have to grow. And if we continue to do what we expect to always be doing hybrid at this point going forward, we feel like the climate will change forever.
Yeah, definitely. And it continues to evolve, and, we've got to be flexible and responsive to how we react to it. So in terms of that, in terms of, talent and teams and resourcing, have you added any specialized personnel, or are you just training as you go, watching YouTube videos, figuring it out to make it happen? And how are you planning around that? You mentioned the extra preparation. Maybe tell us a little bit about the differential between on-site and preparing for a hybrid or virtual event.
Yeah. So Philip is our demo program manager, and he is now our producer. So he is building a show. So, and our briefing, our virtual briefing is a show. And so the timing, the camera angles, bringing in the titles, all of those things, we've had to learn on our own. And one thing that we haven't talked about, Marshall, is now that we have all this video, people want the recording, right? There's some things they might not want to say in a recorded environment. So we are now looking at, which segment do we record, making sure we've got approvals to record. And from a demo perspective, being able to capture, edit it down. So now we're editors too, editing down that content that we've recorded, and then hosting that as a post event into our customer portal. So that for those that weren't able to join, they can access the recording, and we again try to break it into digestible snippets. So that's a lot.
So interesting. Yeah, it's a lot, and impressive that you've adapted and are making it work with the same team members.
Job security, Marshall.
A raise.
Good job
sure.
security.
Absolutely. Okay, so Bryan, tell us a little bit about what's up in cloud space. So big brand, you're in a highly competitive space, you've really got to come correct, right? And you're essentially launching in this state of hybrid/virtual requirements. Here in the Bay Area, things continue to be very strict in terms of rules. So, it's not an option, right? So tell me a little bit about what the experience is from a virtual hybrid perspective, what those considerations actually look like.
Kathy was actually speaking my language. And so a lot of the things that she touched upon have really been the focus for us. When we think about hybrid, we approach it in a unique way where the team and I were having a conversation. It's like, we could get the virtual right, we'll get the hybrid right. It's adding that layer on top of the virtual, but getting the virtual right, I make it sound simple, and it's pretty complex and intricate. Kathy touched on some of the considerations, like I said, but we didn't realize that our space, for example, has a lot of natural lighting. So as soon as you walk in, if you remember Marshall, it can be very bright and welcoming and exciting to be in that space, very colorful. At the same time, when you start bringing video cameras into that environment, how do you manage that, right? How do you make sure that you can bring the content into the virtual world that's actually being displayed in the physical world, maybe on a display or in an exhibit area? And so actually you're showing the image of our production studio that we are literally in the process of building. And so I think in that picture, I was telling you, like, here's where we'll put furniture.
You were explaining
it. Yeah, we can change the layout and make sure that it goes from like maybe a living room setting to a data center setting where we can actually put context around what we're speaking to our solutions with our customers about. And so
cool.
It's really, and actually you're good, Marshall. You got a shot of our PTZ camera in the other image, and that PTZ camera, there's probably about 7 or 8 of them throughout our space that are capturing different camera angles. And then we're able to really like capture those shots, be able to do the close up, being able to give better context to what the demo presenter is actually saying in person. And to Kathy's point, we've discussed even up until late last night, making sure that when we start recording these, we're capturing the right things and being able to cut them down and have snippets to be available to account teams for better engagement. And so this entire thing has really been like a production experience, right? And full-on education. And we have folks in our team with that background to be able to kind of manage that also. I didn't get to show you the kind of the control room for how we're doing this today, while our production studio is being developed, probably available within the next few weeks. But that behind the scenes producer is a really important role, because they're really making the magic happen along with whoever the demo presenter happens to be. And so
cool,
being able to make sure that the content is being brought in, like I mentioned, like we have digital signage in this space. Why can't we bring some of that into the virtual space? And so bringing the right encoders and decoders to be able to capture that and work with our physical displays. I mean, it's a full-on production.
Indeed, it is. It's a whole new world, and we're all becoming producers and videographers for sure in real time. So I know that our audience is very curious about some of the cool stuff we're sharing on screen here. Tell us a little bit more about the studio. So obviously for these cool interactives and demos that you have, you're ensuring that PTZ cameras, and that stands for pan tilt zoom for anybody in the audience might be curious. So they're able to have an operator move that around and show the correct angle to really capture what's happening in the space. So it feels like a multi-directional conversation. So Bryan and team presenting to the customer able to ask questions and engage, but also interact with the far end audience is a really important capability there. But in terms of what you're offering in this studio, I mean, I've never seen anything like this. I've got a green screen behind me, but it doesn't look like that one. What's the end result going to look like as far as the production that you're hosting in that space?
Well, a great question, Marshall, because there's a lot of things that a lot of experiences we're looking to enable. One, we want to virtualize our demo experience, right?
Yeah.
But also using that studio to actually have the dynamic customized video for the customer, right? So if a customer wants to speak to the CEO of Cloud, who may be on another part of the globe for that moment, he can come into that space the day before he leaves, record a customized video, and we can edit it and bring motion graphics and all type of cool things into that pre-recorded video content. It also will be utilized for industry experts and subject matter experts to be able to pre-record content that we can play within a briefing or during a demo. Think about things like podcasts and different experience like live streaming. And so, yeah, you might want to be able to have, my team might kill me for saying this, but a standard time, Tuesdays and Thursdays afternoons, where account teams and customers can dial in and know they're going to get a workspace demo every Thursday afternoon, or be able to talk about Doc AI, which is another one of our solutions. And so really being able to take that production world and bring it into the briefing world and make it work for us. One of the things that you're seeing in that studio space is like, it will have There's a grid on top of the ceiling, and it'll actually have a ceiling mounted camera. It'll have a floor-based camera, as well as one or two people maybe in the space with handheld cameras. And so bringing in multiple camera views will make it a little bit more dynamic and exciting. And the real hook, as far as our philosophy in approaching this, is our production quality will be key. And that will bring in account teams, will keep customers interested and engaged.
Very interesting. So obviously, you know, as a Google shop, you're using Google Meet as your vehicle to share a lot of this content. Is that a hard rule, or are you having to accommodate other system types? Brian, you can think about that for a second. Kathy, I know that you're using Teams. Is that hard for you, or do you have to accommodate whatever the customer needs?
We accommodate the customer needs, but it does bring, we try to, have some standards, here's some kind of, we try to share in advance, here's how you use the camera. So in the beginning, it was a lot different because people weren't comfortable with video conferencing. Now everybody's used to one platform or another. They're getting a little easier to use. So we do accommodate for the customers, but it makes a huge difference on us.
Certainly.
One of the things that I wanted to just mention what Brian said is with the studio in particular is, we're briefing. I'm a briefing strategist, right? I build an entire, you give me your goals and I help you, with your content and your presenters, and I prep them and I plan them. When you have a success like that with that demo, now they want that demo for 3 other people. And so now we're the experts with video editing demos. And so our role is expanding. And I think that's where, when I mentioned staff expanding, that's where that's going to happen. We also have a studio that we've built. It's not part of our customer engagement center. It is part of our global marketing team. And so how we can partner with them and use their studio for those, quick demos. And as Brian said, do you just have a Tuesday at 3 product demo that people can dial into? And so that's something to think about.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for programs across the board to reach across aisles into different parts of the organization to be able to provide value. Like you said, your traffic is down, but I'm sure that you're definitely staying busy with other types of activities that go beyond what an executive briefing is, to be able to market and influence sales in totally new ways. So it's a new frontier, a lot of exciting opportunity there. Brian, I want to make sure we get your response to this. Are you setting a hard rule on everything's happening on Meet, or if you have a special scenario, maybe a limitation on the customer side, will you adjust?
Well, what you're really alluding to is something that companies have been trying to solve for a long time.
And let's remind our audience, you've been with Cisco back in the telepresence years, so this isn't a new thing for you by any means. Hybrid's probably old news.
It's not a new thing for me, but we knew that back then we were a little bit ahead of the curve. And so when we talk about things like video interoperability, there's a lot of considerations there. There's companies that have different network security requirements and limitations that you will not interoperate with another video platform. And there's some really legitimate reasons to why that is. When we think about the business case, though, that gets presented when we want to be able to say, hey, there's a customer that doesn't use our Meet platform and we have an opportunity to really partner with them and be their cloud partner, let's do what we can. And so we're going to try and do that. We'll embark upon the interoperability strategy in early 2022. And as we do that, there's a lot of considerations there, because maybe we'll lose some features, maybe we'll gain some features, what will be appropriate for briefings and demos and what might not be. And so that's a whole nother frontier, but it's doable. And coming from an environment that's done it before, it just takes a lot of coordination, a lot of planning, like Kathy said. And so we'll add these layers a phase at a time.
Interesting. So we had a question about staffing that popped up here. So do you have a separate person for logistics and coordination, Brian, separate from your actual operator? Kathy, I know that it sounds like you do. You're all kind of pitching in, but tell me a little bit about how you segment the roles to actually host one of these events and make it all happen. Kathy, you want to take that for us? Yes.
So right now we do have, the logistics coordinator. and is also acting as part of the production team. So you've got the producer who's running the switcher and the different camera views. And then you have the director who's trying to keep the presenter, looking at the camera. And then you have somebody zooming in on the camera and, oh, we have 3 cameras. So I need somebody else to zoom in on this camera. So we need 2 people. And thankfully, our leadership has acknowledged some early success. We had a wonderful remote briefing that led to 2 other remote briefings, and we closed a $17 million opportunity with a virtual briefing, like within the first 3 months of doing it. So now we have leverage. And so, yes, I say you need more staff. You can't, it's hard.
Definitely. Yeah, that makes sense. Bryan, does that ring true for you? Are you adding some specialized roles or maybe training some team members to expand that gap?
So, a couple things. One, we're really fortunate because our producer kind of placed 2 or 3 different roles where he's producing. He has the capability of actually directing from the control room, as well as doing the video editing and the post-production, which is a whole nother thing. As we think about how we're doing this today, we're fortunate because we do have a coordinator team who works with the demonstration content tech team. And that tech team is actually really, really close partners to us because they're on site making sure that, oh no, it's too bright because the sun is up in the morning and we didn't think about that. Let's go ahead and bring some shades down and alter the lighting, and making sure the camera, making sure that that tech team is getting really good at adjusting aperture settings on cameras. Like, I never thought about that when we were just saying, hey, let's make sure we bring some cameras into the situation, right? But definitely we have a good support staff. There is an opportunity always for us to kind of add to the production staff, and we will in the future. What Kathy is saying is so accurate. Like, it takes at least 3 good people in the background to make this happen.
Sure.
And we're seeing that. And then you have our demo presenters in front of the camera that are actually doing the actual customer facing, whether it's in person or virtually. And so it could be 1 or 2 people at a time, even delivering that.
And you lose that relationship. Our presenters they're relationship people. And so when you've got them in person, the jokes are happening, everyone's having a great time. And it's taken them a lot to just get to be comfortable going back and forth 2-way, through the camera. And it's a skill that we haven't mastered. And it's going to be, I think our subject matter experts we're looking at now, do we still use subject matter experts, or do we hire an actor who knows just enough to run the demo or to run and have that subject matter expert partner with them, right? So you've got somebody that's doing the demo, but the subject matter expert is doing the talking more or less. So having a Vanna White, right? So
for sure,
that's something we've got to consider from a hardware perspective.
Absolutely. That's really interesting. So just kind of transitioning here. So a few of the things that have been interesting to me or been repeated time and time again. So I think you both spoke to this interoperability concept really well. We have to have the ability to support, but zeroing in on your standard allows you to get educated and trained within at least a somewhat consistent workflow. So kind of identifying what that partner is, what the platform you're going to be using, and zeroing in on that, with some knobs and levers to be able to accommodate other use cases, but learning your kind of primary tool has great advantages as far as that muscle memory and delivering a more polished experience. And in terms of that polish, we're having to incorporate new technology. Things like the cart has been a really persistent theme, Kathy, for Lexmark and other programs that we're talking to. Being able to leverage the center itself. So now we're in this kind of interesting stage where we're not all locked in at home and can't leave or go to the office. We get some special permissions for the unique nature of executive briefings. So it gives an opportunity to leverage the environment itself as a really compelling backdrop to tell that story. So you both have these, you've invested a lot in demos and experiences that are actually in the space. And by creating, from something really wild, like the studio that Bryan is putting together, that's going to be this kind of full virtual reality type experience, to something where we can just move throughout the space to bring the audience with us on that journey, I think is a really key thing. And there's a lot of different ways to approach that. And obviously you're going to need the teams to actually pull that all together. So it's an interesting thing to watch. I think it's about a 50-50 split between adding specialized personnel, or maybe bringing them in from another department in the business. But what that means is that you're the experts in producing this compelling marketing content that it may be originated in a briefing as a subject matter expert demo, but now that it's recorded, now that it's on camera, we can leverage that asset to influence other parts of the business. Like, it could be something that sales teams share with their customers to build interest, or that the marketing org uses as part of a product launch or something like that. So as we make these investments and we train our teams on these different skill sets, we can create value in totally new forums where we may have not previously had the opportunity to do so. So I think we're continuing to learn a lot about how we can add value outside of the typical executive briefing scenario, which has been really interesting. And finally, something that's kind of near and dear to me, this idea of customer portals having a polished digital experience that allows you to, obviously, it's not going to Lexington and going to Keeneland and seeing the horses and drinking bourbon, but a way to extend the engagement somewhat, to offer this level of a personalized VIP experience that just feels different than what your average account or sales team can do on their own without the program at all. So something that feels special, it feels intentional, and like it was purpose built for my conversation that I'm having that day is enough to really put it over the edge. And we'll talk a little bit about solicitation feedback and what those tools help with here in our wrap up topic. So without further ado, I'll move directly into that. So in terms of wrapping up the briefing post event, take a deep breath. We've made it successfully through this thing. Talk to me a little bit about what you're looking at in terms of KPIs and measurement. Maybe it's more qualitative than quantitative. Bryan, you want to take that first, as far as what you're looking for, as far as a takeaway from one of these events, and what your business actually cares about primarily.
Right. So when we look at measuring our success, it's a multi-pronged approach towards it, because yes, we'll do the post-briefing surveys, which provide a lot of insight to how account teams felt, how customers felt about that briefing day. We'll think about post-mortem calls, which allow us to do what we do and deliver even better. And then the other piece to consider is that we have a metrics dashboard. On the back end of that is a platform called Qualtrics, and it pushes a lot of data that we can look at historically, quarter by quarter, that helps us make determinations for capacity planning, resources, seeing what the trends are, understanding what the briefing topics are. So all of these things are helping us actually guide the business and get that feedback and have tangible metrics to make business decisions on.
Very interesting. So Kathy, you as a program director, I know that this is something that probably keeps you up at night. Talk to me a little bit about measurement and analysis of the actual event. What are some KPIs that you're looking at and reporting out to your teams upstream from the program?
Sure. So like Bryan, we're looking at the same things. We send email surveys, usually a day or two after the briefing. We have a very high return rate. We send them to everyone who's in attendance. We don't maybe have every single participant respond, but every single briefing, I think we're at an 80% return of surveys for at least some or more than a few, will respond to our surveys, and that's relationships. So that is our team really developing the relationship prior to, whether it's the logistics coordinator or it's the strategist or it's whoever's, managing the entertainment. But we make that ask of them, and they really want to help us be successful. I think where I'd like to know a little bit more is, how did they feel about us before? And how do they feel about us now?
Of course.
They'll tell us they've loved us before, even if they didn't, and because they love us now, for sure. So it's trying to really to find the right tool, the right question for that. But really, it's all about closing deals. And so we take all of those survey results. We look at participants. We look at where they were in the funnel. And as I mentioned, we've got a 19 million in closed account or closed opportunities that were associated with the CEC, which is our engagement center. So that's for 2021. And we've got another 300 million like in the pipeline that has touched, the briefing center this year. So that is really all you need, right? If you're closing deals.
That is show me the money, as they say, for sure. That's really key. And not much else matters if you're getting it done. So, Brian, as you're looking ahead, you're investigating these tools. Is there anything that you can think of? Kathy, your response rate is extremely positive, right? Like hearing that 80%, it's the bourbon. Okay, that answers my question there. But yeah, developing those personal relationships, I think, is key. Developing that rapport and having the customer understand that they want you to be successful through that conversation. You're creating that bond, and there's really no trick to it. There's no magic that you're doing that another program couldn't actually adopt. It's developing a relationship and actually asking for that feedback in a way that the customer actually wants to give it to you. It's personal.
And keeping it simple, right?
Yeah,
5
definitely.
questions max, right? You got to keep it simple. We don't care if they enjoyed the food because we're not going to be able to change the catering, right? So we only ask the questions that we know we can influence. And I think that's pretty critical.
So I want to just while we're kind of wrapping up this topic, I want to flash up a poll here for our audience. If I can. Oh, my polls are closed. Never mind, y'all. I would love to hear from you, but I think my false start there eliminated that capability. So anyways, moving on from that. So just looking ahead, I want you to kind of take the lens of reality off for just a moment here and think a little bit about, in a blue sky scenario, for briefings in the future, we're getting a lot more data and, through the actual video participation. You've both mentioned recordings and like, what do we do with that? How do we capture and take action on what we're getting from that? Talk to me a little bit about what you think we're going to be trying to do in the future as far as measuring that participation and engagement and getting more insights out of this. Like what is that going to be in 5 years from now? Are we going to be using AI to determine if the participant actually is listening to what we're saying? Are we going to track their eyeballs to know if they're paying attention or not? Brian, you're a tech guy. Talk to me a little bit about, just in a blue sky scenario, what you think we're going to be looking towards in the future.
I think that it'll go from a manual effort to more of an automated experience. Specifically, like, for example, today we're doing note-taking in briefings. And I know from our perspective at Google, we probably will end up using as my pixel is going off because I said Google, excuse me, we'll probably look at doing more transcription type capability within our video technologies and different platforms so that it's a bit more seamless. You touched on something that I was actually speaking with Dale about recently, which was being able to capture how engaged someone was and during that briefing time. And so I think maybe before this session started, you made a comment where there's definitely an opportunity in the future for us to leverage wearables within briefing centers. And so I think that will become a thing where we can be able to capture how much engagement we're getting, whether it's through wearables or just being able to use camera analytics. And so there's a lot that I think will happen. I also believe that from a data perspective, we'll be able to pull real time. I know one of our tech experiences that we kind of created a fictitious environment, like a retail environment. We're having real live data being recorded during that actual customer engagement. Well, I think that will actually kind of spill into the actual briefing experience where maybe I can pull data that's real time of how much interaction someone had with a particular exhibit or a display or a technology experience. And so I think that's very much future focused, and it's on the radar for us at some point in time in the future. And it'll be a journey, but this is exciting me.
Yeah, definitely.
So Marshall, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but one of the things that we've been looking at with our recordings is using some of the Nexus tools to take those transcripts, and then it gives us a read on how successful we were based on, and I don't know how you all do it, but those are some things that we're like excited about doing, taking some of that, and getting more feedback from that. As he said, it's all being recorded, ahead of time. We don't need to ask questions anymore because we already know what the feedback is going to be.
Certainly. And there's so much complexity there. It's as we look ahead into what AI and predictive modeling is as it relates to these sales conversations, there's so much opportunity, and we want to capture it as much as possible so we can actually take action on that. But there's these privacy concerns that are part of the conversation, which is something we're all going to have to work through as an industry. But the reality is our competitors are trying to figure out how to do it too. And so it's something that we have to keep top of mind, is how we get better insight into those conversations and what actually moves the needle within them. So it's a really exciting thing. Like you mentioned, we're experimenting. We have in our releases, sentiment analysis, being able to transcribe conversations and give you a positive, neutral, negative indicator on what that actually looks like. So that'll take a thought shift to incorporate that into how we operate. But a lot of exciting opportunities that we can start experimenting with and incorporating into how we're doing briefings day to day. And this new hybrid and virtual model gives us a whole new capability to do that wouldn't have existed for purely in-person things. So there are some upsides to this challenge that we've been working through. So we're right at the top of the hour here. We got really into it and a lot of fun. So I want to thank you both for spending some time with me this afternoon. I know that our audience really appreciates it. I really admire the programs that both of you are representing. We think you're doing incredibly cool stuff, and we're so grateful that Kathy, you took a moment away from the track to be able to spend some time with us. And Bryan, you're dialing in from headquarters. I know that you've got a lot of excitement going on too. So thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much to our audience for joining in, rolling with us as far as the reschedule. So everybody have a great Thursday, and we'll be looking forward to connecting soon. Thanks, Bryan, Kathy.
Thanks, Marshall. Take care, everyone.